Okay, so get this. We're tackling burnout versus depression today.
Ooh, yeah, that's a big one.
It is. And it's something a lot of us are thinking about these days.
I hear that.
So you sent in this fascinating audio in French. Six différences entre le burnout et la dépression.
Okay, breaking it down.
It means six differences between burnout and depression.
Right.
And honestly, going through it, I'm like, yeah, we could all use a little French lesson in spotting these things.
Totally. It's not just about feeling stressed, right?
Exactly.
Understanding what makes them unique,
Mm-hmm.
where those feelings are coming from, that's key to getting the right help.
And getting back on track, right? It's not always as simple as just, giving it a name.
100%.
So let's unpack this expert's first point of comparison, that initial, wait a minute, moment.
Okay.
They describe burnout as hitting a wall.
Interesting.
Like 1 minute you're pushing through and then bam, you're totally stalled.
Makes sense.
Have you ever had those running on fumes moments?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And that's a good way to put it, because it can be so jarring.
Brutal.
Yeah, you question everything, your ability to cope, like your resilience.
It's like your whole system just says, nope.
And the thing is, we often ignore all the warning signs.
Oh, totally. We're like,
Right.
it's fine, it's fine.
Exactly. And then ex they contrast this with depression.
Okay.
They describe it more as this slow, sinking feeling,
Oh, that's good.
like you're stuck in quicksand.
That is such a powerful image. It makes you think about how insidious depression can be. It's
Oh.
not always like this big dramatic thing. It
Yeah.
can be this gradual, like, erosion of your energy and motivation.
It chips away at you.
And you might not even realize how far you've sunk until it's like almost impossible to climb back out.
You're right. And that difference in how these experiences begin,
Yeah.
it plays out in how we actually deal with them, too.
How we struggle.
Yeah, exactly. The expert talks about how with burnout, there's this urge
Oh, tell me.
to just keep pushing power through it.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Ugh.
like if you just try harder,
You got it.
you can overcome it.
It's that whole hustle culture mentality we've all bought into at some point, right? But like you were saying earlier, ignoring those warning signs
Oh, yeah.
can backfire.
Big time. It's a recipe for disaster with burnout. It's like trying to run a marathon on an empty tank.
And you just hit a wall.
You do. With depression, though, the struggle isn't so much about pushing through.
Oh, interesting.
It's more about this overwhelming sense of defeat.
Oof. Yeah.
Like, what's the point in even trying? It's that quicksand feeling we talked about. You're stuck, and you don't have the energy to pull yourself free.
So it's like with burnout, you're fighting against that feeling of being overwhelmed.
Right.
But with depression, you're almost surrendering to it.
That's a really good way to put it.
It's like two sides of the same coin in a way.
Totally. And this difference in how we cope, how we struggle, it actually connects to another distinction the expert makes:
Okay. I'm intrigued. What is it?
the origin and scope of each experience.
Where it all begins and how far it spreads.
You got it. So they say burnout usually has a very specific point of origin.
Like a starting line.
Exactly. Could be a demanding job, stressful family situation,
Oh, man, yeah.
even something like training for a marathon. It feels very localized.
Okay, so if burnout is like this pressure cooker in one specific area of your life, then what's depression like?
Well, they're suggesting that depression tends to be more pervasive.
Meaning?
It's not just one stressor.
Oh.
It's more of a shift in your overall mood. Your whole outlook on life changes.
Wow.
And it impacts everything: your relationships, your hobbies, even simple things like, enjoying a sunny day.
So it's like burnout is this spotlight shining on one part of your life, and depression is more like a fog that just rolls in and covers everything.
That's a really good way to visualize it.
And that brings us to a really interesting point, how time feels different with each of these.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
Well, they say someone with burnout is obsessed with time. It
Really?
becomes this enemy to be battled. This constant pressure to cram more and more into every second.
It sounds exhausting.
Right. You're always racing the clock, but never actually catching up.
Wow. Okay, so with burnout, you're trying to wrestle time to the ground.
Exactly. But with depression, time takes on this totally different quality.
Like what?
The expert describes it as time losing its meaning. It's this vast, empty expanse.
Oh, wow.
You're not racing against it. It's almost like you're being suffocated by it.
Huh. That's heavy.
It's like you're stuck in that endless Monday feeling, but it's every single day.
And it shows you how much these conditions can really weigh on you, how they affect how we see the world around us.
Yeah.
And, speaking of how these things impact us, how we feel inside,
Yeah.
this takes us to the next thing. The expert compares our mood and our behavior.
And this is where it gets tricky, right? Because if you just look at the surface,
Yeah.
burnout and depression, they can look pretty similar.
Or absolutely. They both drain you.
Yeah.
You have no energy, no motivation. You might even be a little more grumpy.
A little. I'd say more than a little.
Okay, a lot more grumpy. But you're right.
There's got to be a way to tell them apart, right? Like, what are the signs?
So this expert, they actually warn us, untreated burnout, it can turn into depression.
Whoa. Oh, okay, so we got to be able to tell the difference.
Right, which makes this even more important. So they say irritability, cynicism, this feeling of being totally wiped out, those are like the hallmarks of burnout.
You're exhausted, but there's also this, like, tension, right?
Exactly.
You're, like, running on fumes and caffeine and one bad meeting away from just losing it.
And we've all been there, right? But with depression, those feelings of exhaustion,
They're different.
they come with this sadness that just seems to hang over everything. You're not interested in the things you used to love? It's deeper than just being tired.
It's like emptiness.
Right.
Like a total lack of interest.
And it can be really hard to shake.
Mm.
So imagine it like this. Burnout is being plugged into a power outlet that's overloading your system, and depression is being completely unplugged. Someone just hit the off switch on your whole life.
No wonder it's so hard to function when you're dealing with either one. But okay, our expert doesn't just leave us hanging with these descriptions, right? They give us some clues on how to get out of this.
They do.
So tell me, what's their take on recovering from these two things? Burnout versus depression.
So they really emphasize the paths to recovery. They're just as different as the conditions themselves.
Okay, interesting.
For burnout, it's all about getting to the root of it. What are the things pushing you past your limit?
So you got to figure out what those pressure points are. That's step one.
Right. And once you've done that, you got to find ways to make them less intense.
Oh, okay. I like that. So how do you actually do that?
Could be setting boundaries at work, having some of those tough conversations with your boss or coworkers,
Oh, boy.
or even rethinking your whole career path.
So sometimes burnout recovery means making big changes.
It can.
Wow. What about depression then? How do you usually deal with that?
This is where they suggest something I think you'll find really interesting, combining therapy with coaching.
Therapy and coaching, huh? I wouldn't have thought to put those together. What's the thinking there?
So therapy, it helps you unpack all the emotional stuff behind the depression
Right.
and helps you learn healthier ways to cope.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need a little extra boost.
To actually make those changes in your life.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yes.
actually doing it day to day.
Right.
That's where coaching comes in.
Makes sense.
It gives you practical tools you can use, keeps you accountable. You've got support to make those changes stick.
Oh, wow. It's like having a personal trainer, but for your mental well-being.
Exactly.
I like that a lot. So we're seeing this pattern here with burnout. It's about finding those external stressors, those pressure points. And then with depression, it's more about working on the inside,
Right.
rewiring those thought patterns, figuring out how to connect with yourself again and with the world around you.
And that's what I think is so important about this whole conversation.
What do you mean?
It's not about finding the perfect label,
Right.
It's about recognizing the signs your body's talking to you, your mind's talking to you. You listen to them.
And get help.
Yes, exactly. Because whether you're hitting that wall with burnout or feeling lost in the fog of depression, there's a way out.
There's always a way.
There is.
There are ways to get your energy back, your motivation, your joy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes just knowing the difference between these two things, that's a huge step to feeling better.
It really is. And what's really stuck with me through all of this is how important it is to catch those warning signs early on.
Yeah.
We tried to push through. We ignore that little voice that's saying, hey, something's not right. But this expert reminds us.
We can't ignore it.
No. Tuning in early, taking action early on, it makes a world of difference.
It's so much easier to prevent than to have to fix it later on.
Exactly. So to our listener, I hope this has given you a new way to look at these experiences because knowledge is power, right?
Absolutely.
Understanding the difference between burnout and depression, it lets you take control of your mental health.
You can ask for what you need.
Yes. So until next time, take care of yourselves, everyone.
We'll see you soon.